And we're back. I'm Bill Hellkamp of Reach Development Systems, and with me is Professor Scott Plum of the Minnesota Sales Institute.
There are people you know and people you don't know. If we leverage the people we know to get introduced to the people that we don't know, we will shorten the sales cycle, increase the closing ratio, and increase your prospect base faster and cheaper than any other form of marketing. In today's show, we will discuss the power of referrals and much more on episode 419 of Get in the Door podcast.
As we get started today, we want to start, of course, with our book club. That is The Challenger Sale, Taking Control of the Customer Conversation by Matthew Dixon and Brent Adamson. Hopefully our listeners that want to be part of this have taken the time to read that. We are on chapter 2, The Challenger, a new model for high performance. So they start off with talking about all the surveying they did, and one of the things I liked about their survey method, I know that as I've taught about what we need to do better, I always talk about attitude, skills, and knowledge. They sampled attitudes, skills, and behaviors, activities, and knowledge. And I really like that they're talking about what activities people are doing. Some can call those skills, but I think it's an important part of the sales process. What are we doing along with our knowledge?
It really is. Our activities make up our objectives. Our objectives give us the outcome. We cannot control the number. We cannot control our results. We can only control what we do, the activities to control the objectives. And I think when they really break it down, it gives us a real area to focus. And I love about the book in this chapter is they really break down specifically what the activities are. And it's a long list. And if you haven't bought the book and you're not reading it or you're still thinking about it, it's really a great book. And if you're in sales leadership, sales management, or you're a salesperson, this is going to be a resource for you. And it's still relevant in today's marketplace. And there's not a lot of books that really continue to be relevant in the marketplace 5 to 10 years after they're written it. But this is one of them. I really
I think also, anytime we can get one or two ideas out of a book that change our model, our process, they can be very helpful. So they identify 5 different types of reps. I know you talked about them earlier because you had read ahead, but This is where we talk about the 5 different types of reps. Hard workers, a high activity level. So those are the nose to the grindstone kind of person. Relationship builders, those are do whatever it takes to make a customer happy. We all know the lone wolf, somebody who just kind of does it all by instinct, but they don't really have a process. They won't follow a process. And you know what? Those people never do the paperwork, right?
Right. You never know what they do. That's
right.
The problem.
That's right.
If you're worried about your relationship, your reputation with your customers and your prospects, be cautious about the lone wolf, because I think they're the most dangerous out there because you don't know what they're doing.
Well, they also identify them as about the second best sales level of salesperson.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. And I think that they're very ambitious, but I think you need to be able to give them the resources that they need in order not to take shortcuts and be really focused on understanding what their process is when they're talking to people that you're not aware of, because it is your reputation.
Well, I'm a big believer that there ought to be, for most of these high-level salespersons, they should have some inside help, keeping track of things for them, making some follow-up calls. If I've got a hunter out there who's really good at making appointments and being in appointments, having them spend hours doing paperwork or following up to see if something's getting done at the office is crazy.
And I think that that's a great progression within a sales department, is to start people as sales assistants, start them on the process, to do the paperwork, to know how to do it, to get good at it, and to know what it takes.
And the service and what we can do well.
Right. And then graduate them to a salesperson. If you have inside sales, let's start there. If you have outside sales, then that progresses. And then eventually you'll determine, when they're a sales assistant, are they going to be a good inside or outside, or maybe they're maybe an account manager. Right. Maybe that's a good role for them.
Right. Yeah, I think we too often, and we'll get back to these other 5 types, but I think too often organizations always are trying to hire this top level salesperson. And in most cases, they do better by hatching those top level salespeople by training them through their program and helping them understand the process. So our fourth type of rep is a reactive problem solver who responds to requests and is better at helping customer post-sale. And then finally, the challenger, and what the challenger identifies as they press customers on their thinking and on pricing. So obviously, we're going to be talking a lot about the challenger as being the best. But what I want to ask you, Scott, is as you looked at these five, did you identify strongly in just one area, or did you see yourself maybe in two or three areas as a type of salesperson?
In my sales career, I've seen myself starting off as the relationship builder and really focusing on that. And then I transitioned into the hard worker, which is the hard worker is working hard, but not necessarily improving, not working on a better way or more efficient way or more effective way. And then I got into being more of the challenger salesperson, which is not necessarily telling a prospect what they should know, but really bringing them up to date on some of the things that they need to know about in the future, the consequences of inaction and the future of the company if they don't make a change.
Yeah, they identify the relationship builder as probably the lowest level or lowest productivity in sales. I don't find myself falling into just one category. I think I certainly have challenger aspects to what I do, but I also have problem solver aspects. And there's times where I'm a hard worker. There's times where I'm a relationship builder. So I'm going to be interested to see in this book if I'm making a mistake because I kind of fall into a number of categories and need to make some changes for myself, or if this challenger isn't quite so finely or so strongly identified as to these specific characteristics only.
And I think the book in this chapter defined the challenger sales philosophy pretty well when it says you are asking your customers to change their behavior, to stop acting in one way and start acting in another way. And I think there's another thing to really keep in mind when we're a salesperson, and I hear it too often, is that salespeople feel like they need to go out and educate their prospects. And I think that there is a portion of the conversation that is education, but I think we need to keep in mind we want to educate to influence and not educate to teach. And I think that that's something that changes a salesperson from being a problem solver, which is education to teach, versus being a challenger salesperson, which is to educate to influence. And I think that that makes up the biggest difference in the definition of the challenger sale. What do you think, Bill?
Well, they identify the challenger as someone who teaches, tailors, and takes control.
Mm-hmm.
So I do believe that an important aspect of the challenger is understanding the industry that they're in and understanding the customer's industry and how those two things integrate. What am I bringing to this process and how can I make this process better? And in that knowledge, I should be able to challenge my customer. So in that way, I'm teaching them, I'm tailoring my product or service or offering to best meet those needs, and I'm helping them take control. I should be really pissing my customer off every once in a while with respect. And I think that's what they mean by the challenger.
Well, I think people buy emotionally, and we've all heard that before, and they justify it intellectually. And when we get a prospect somewhat upset or a little off balance or a little irritated or a little frustrated with their current situation, we're beginning the process of change. And we can't stop and seek the prospect's approval, which is very common with salespeople. They're like upsetting the prospect, so then they want to stop and they want to be nice and they want to be their friend and they want to build a relationship and they don't want to do anything to jeopardize their relationship. But when you start to challenge them in the way they think, now you're in the process of change. So now you give them the knowledge, you influence them on the process that they're going through when they make decisions. You're giving them a different outcome based on what they're getting based on a different process. Just like salespeople change the process, you change the outcome. The solutions change the outcome of what prospects receive when they change their solution or the service provider.
Well, I know that from experience that we need to be careful how we challenge our clients I remember getting fired once because I challenged them and told them the truth.
Yeah.
And how we tell them the truth can be important. My situation was a negotiations course where the boss said, teach my people how to negotiate because they fall all over themselves to give the customer what they want. And it turned out that the boss was the one who fell all over himself to give the customer anything they asked for.
Mm.
And his team was just trying to get ahead of him and not have him be the hero all the time.
Wow.
So when I identified this problem to him, he said, "I don't think I need your services anymore."
Yeah.
So that happens sometimes,
Right.
But what I've grown to know is there was probably a better way to tell him that so that he could be effective. He needed to see that himself rather than me being so blunt and telling him that. So understanding how to be the challenger is going to be very important too, and how we use people skills to be able to both challenge them and keep our jobs.
I think a good question to ask somebody is, how can I tell you something that you need to know without you getting upset at me? And they'll say, go ahead and tell me. Well, you've already prefaced it by saying that it's going to upset them. So are they bracing for something? And they're probably overly bracing for something that's not as harsh as it comes across. So you're safe.
Yeah, you pre-play it a little bit so that they're ready.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Excellent. Well, I'm looking forward to chapter 3.
Yeah, I think one thing that we need to take into context with this book and the process and the people that are involved is we need to have trust and rapport established with our prospects first. We need to work on building their respect through the questions that we're asking. And when that trust and rapport is built and we earn their respect, it's going to make it easier for us to challenge a prospect. So we can't shortcut the step of building trust and rapport when we're starting a conversation with a prospect. So keep that in mind and not take that out of context just because you're jumping into a book on the challenger sale. We have other stuff that we need to build up before we get to that.
Well, and that trust and rapport is what I call relationship building.
Right.
So there are aspects then of that relationship builder to someone who is going to be the challenger. It doesn't mean being a jerk to the customer.
Right.
So we need to figure out how to do that. So excellent.
Yeah, always be respectful and keep the dignity in mind of the prospect, but you do need to challenge them, because if you just walk out of there and you didn't change their behavior, you didn't change the outcome, and you didn't change the way they think, you didn't challenge them. And if you don't challenge them, you can't change them. This segment of Get Into the Door podcast is brought to you by The Art of Prospecting, your guide to getting in the door, by Steve Kloida.
Steve Kloida was known internationally for increasing salespeople's ability to make solid appointments with qualified prospects. You too can learn this essential skill by ordering a copy of his superb book, The Art of Prospecting, your guide to getting in the door. In this book, Steve shares the top strategies and tactics he has developed, implemented, and personally tested with more than 1 million sales and prospecting calls. You can get his book on the website theprospectingexpert.com. In addition, check out his other great online resources. Instant Sales Coaching, which will guide you through 5 online success modules. A guided prospecting process entitled Call Reluctance Transformer. And the Magnetic Selling Strategies Workbook, a detailed step-by-step guide to increasing your sales. Get any of these valuable resources at theprospectingexpert.com.
So our topic today is on the power of referrals. And Bill and I talked about this in one of the previous episodes. And as we bring up a topic, we keep track of it and we cover it later. So some of the things that we talk about in today's episode, stay tuned. We might even dig a little deeper into the future. So thanks for listening and thanks for subscribing. I think this is really an important part of the sales process. There's five outcomes to every sales call. There's a yes, you get a sale, or you move to the next step, or there's a no, there's not a fit, and congratulations. I mean, you qualified a prospect, you determined that there wasn't a fit, and you didn't clog your pipeline up with unqualified prospects. There's a lesson that you learned, so if you had a chance to do it over, you debrief the sales call, whether you got a yes or you got a no, or you got a stall or put off, you debriefed, you learned something new, you got a clear future, which means they're going to have to talk to somebody else, or they have to review something, and they're going to get back to you at a certain time and a certain day. And if they don't call you back, you've got the right to call them and follow up on the conversation. And the last thing is a referral. But we have to ask for referrals. We need to ask for introductions to people that they know that we don't know that we need to know. And there's a few different ways of doing that. we can look at LinkedIn. I think that that's a fabulous tool in looking up LinkedIn. Bill, how often do you use LinkedIn?
I'm on LinkedIn every day, and that's probably where I look for the most new clients at this time. I used to do a lot more with networking and individual presentations, but that has dried up a little bit. So I'm doing a lot more on LinkedIn, hooking up, looking through the contacts of a friend and asking them just to introduce me to somebody.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the beginning of it, is if we find a prospect. What is a prospect? A good prospect is looking at your past client sales, your past transactions, and where did you get those sales? So look at 3 common attributes amongst the group. So a perfect fit may be in a geographic location, the age range of a person, depending on what you sell, the source as to where you're getting your leads and your business, maybe a current provider that somebody is using right now so that you're keeping track when you talk to people in the past if they're subscribed to something or they're buying from something or they've got a contract with somebody, and also your propinquity, which is a new word for
propinquity.
Your new word
Did you
for
look
some
this
people.
up? Is this word of the day?
No, this is a word that I learned when I was in my marriage class in high school, and I got an
It didn't
A in
take,
that class.
Scott. You haven't been married yet.
I've been practicing, and I'm working on getting better. But your propinquity is the area around you. So they said, you're going to find your spouse in the area around you, your propinquity. So it's where you live, where you go to church, where you work out, where you work, etc., your area around you. So there's some business with the area around us, our propinquity. So look at the 3 common attributes of your past clients. Where do the sales transactions come from? And you're going to see a perfect fit. Then you can go to LinkedIn and you can do a search. So maybe there's a prospect that you read about in the news. So you go, oh, I'd like to meet that person. That's a good fit. That's a perfect fit. That's not a misfit for me. I'd like to meet that person. So you go to LinkedIn, you look them up, and you find out in your LinkedIn network who they're connected to. Now you have to build your LinkedIn network. And I'm grateful that I'm building my LinkedIn network every day, and I'm grateful for the invites that I get from our listeners. And I'm always grateful when they say, I'm a listener, I really like the podcast, I'd like to connect with you. Fabulous.
Yeah, I always like a little note, just not a connection request. I like a little note to say where I picked up your name or why I think it would be a good opportunity to connect. So I do think that if you're trying to connect with people on LinkedIn, just send a little note. It doesn't have to be long. I just say, I met you here. We ought to connect. And that's it. So,
and I've been building mine since I think 2007 is when I got on LinkedIn, and I'm grateful to have about 5,000 connections. So when I want to talk to somebody in town and I look them up on LinkedIn, there's a good chance that they're connected to somebody that I know.
Right.
And then I can reach out to them and I say, I'm kind of curious, how well do you know them? Would you feel comfortable introducing me? And if you do, I promise that I'll be brief and I won't be pushy. And if I find there's not a fit, I won't waste their time. Would you feel comfortable doing that? And most people will say yes.
Yeah. We've moved from I have to make a phone call to Larry to I can just send him an email through LinkedIn and say, I'd like to introduce you to Scott Plum or Bill Healthcamp, and they might have something interesting for you.
Or even skip the email through LinkedIn and just send them an email directly. If you go to LinkedIn, most likely you can see their email address. Or if you're connected to them, hopefully
you can look up their contact information.
Yeah. But you can also look up specific companies that you want to get into. So we've got individuals, we've got companies that you want to connect with. Look at industries on LinkedIn that you want to target. And you can
speaking of companies, that's one of the ways that I have gone from in my in-person referrals. So I, for years, would say to somebody, hey, Larry, it's been good doing business with you. I'm looking for someone like you who's whatever their title is. And, do you have somebody in mind that I could meet? And they never would come up with a name.
Right.
And so what I started doing was carrying a top 10 list of companies. So I have 10 companies, maybe 12 companies I want to do business with. And when I'm talking to someone, and this can be almost in any situation now, I can meet somebody networking and have a good rapport with them. I'll pull out that little list and I'll say, Larry, I'm trying to grow in these companies. Do you know anybody that works anywhere in any of these companies? And now they've got something solid to connect to. And that tends to give me a few more leads than, do you know somebody who's a sales manager I should talk to?
Right. Right. I think it's a great setup. I think another setup is, I like working with you. I'm grateful for our relationship. And I'm guessing that you hang around with people that are like you. And I'd like to do more business with people like you. Who do you feel comfortable introducing me to? So you got companies, then you have industries. So you can search within the industries. If you got a perfect fit, then you can find the companies, or you can look up roles. If you work with, Bill and I are going to target business owners or CEOs or the VP of sales. So we're going to look up that role and we're going to work on an introduction of ourselves or through our network to get to those people.
Right. I think also making sure if you're going to do it as part of your appointment, have it as part of your appointment prep sheet.
Mm-hmm.
So add the question, do you know anybody at these companies? Or the question you just asked, I liked working with you. I'd liked our conversation. Are there other people like you who are committed in this way to their business that I should be talking to? I think so often we just forget. We get caught up in the moment, and if we don't prepare for something, we will forget to do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I've done this twice in the last week, and I'll read the email that I sent off to the person, and I did a phone call with them, and then I wrote an email to them that I want them to send on to a person that they know that I don't know. So it starts off by saying, hi, I'm looking for companies that want to take away more business from, and then I list a company or somebody that they're competing with. I don't want to assume that that's your goal. I'd be grateful if you and I could connect and have a brief conversation, and I'd like to share an idea with you for your consideration. I promise to be brief, and if there is no interest, I won't be pushy. Here's a link to my calendar. Thanks in advance for your time and consideration. It's really short, and it's really brief, and it's telling them that you're going to be brief, you're not going to be pushy, and you make it easy for them to connect with you. And it's just 15 minutes.
Specific. I like the specificity of it with the other company. I get so many LinkedIn mails from people who want to help me grow my business.
Oh, yeah.
That are just generic. They don't know who I am. They've never met me before. And they are just confident that they can grow my business for me. Mm-hmm. And I don't even know who they are. And they don't know, they make no reference to who I know that they know. And it's just, and then they send me 10 of them in 2 weeks, and then they're not on my LinkedIn anymore.
So we don't want to assume people have a problem. We don't want to assume that our goal is their goal. So we say, I'm looking for a company that wants to take more business away from, and it's their competitor. And then I don't want to assume that's your goal. But if we could just have a 15-minute brief conversation, I'll share my idea. You can decide if you want to use it or not. I'll be brief. I won't be pushy. I promise.
Yeah, I would say the real thing for most salespeople is to make a commitment to them. Add it to your activity list. I'm going to ask for X number of referrals every week. I'm going to ask this question. I'm going to send out notes. I'm going to, whatever it is, it's got to be added to your activity list, or you're not going to start to do it.
Yeah, I think the overall goal in doing this is to really create a pure prospect client database, because when you do that, you're going to be shortening your sales cycle and increasing your closing ratio, plus reducing the cost of acquisition, and the marketing costs are going to be more concentrated. So you're reducing that, increasing your profitability.
Well, I'm glad you brought that back in, because that really struck me in your opening, was how important it is to shorten that sales cycle down. If my trust and rapport is built quicker because it's a referral, the sale goes really well. The opportunity, the conversation is always cleaner. I don't always get the deal, but we're much more in a rapport situation much quicker than if I am just cold calling.
And it's transferring the trust of the person that you're both mutually connected to also. And that creates, like Bill says, a more concentrated conversation. It's a more real conversation. Prospects are going to be more comfortable sharing you some of their concerns and objections. And you got to be present to win on an objection. If you're not in the room when you hear an objection, you can't win it. You can't overturn it. It won't happen. It's just a stall and put off then.
Right. Excellent. So what are some resources available that we're going to have on our webpage?
I've got a blog. My blog is the top 7 mistakes salespeople make on LinkedIn. So
okay, and
check that out.
That. Yep. And I have a 2-minute selling tip. That's number 31. Know your top 10, where I go into a little bit more about using the top 10 list. This segment has been brought to you by the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program, presented by the hosts of the Get in the Door podcast.
Business is heating up, and now is the time to get back on the selling track. While others wait for the market to improve, prospects and opportunities await you now. Perhaps you want to be more productive on your prospecting, or you'd like to increase your closing percentage. Maybe having meetings online is not as comfortable as being in person. Sales reps are telling us they need some honest accountability and skill development to rise above the competition. Whatever your reason, this is the perfect time to engage with an experienced sales coach. That is why the host of Get in the Door podcast, Professor Scott Plum and Bill Hellkamp, have developed the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program. For only $495, you can receive personal coaching from the same sales professionals you enjoy on this podcast. It all starts with a discussion to give us your insights into your specific goals, challenges, needs, and motivation. After your 1-hour online session to jumpstart your coaching process, you will receive 5 more half-hour individual coaching sessions to enable you to make improvements over time and create new habits. Most salespeople make their money back with just one sale. Go to getinthedoorpodcast.com to contact Bill or Scott about the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program. Do you believe you deserve better results? Now is the time to invest in yourself and invest in your future.
Well, as we close out today, we want to talk about our golden nugget, our quote of the day. And this one is from Jimmy Dean, the Pure Pork Sausage King. I can't change the direction of the wind, but I can adjust my sails to always reach my destination.
Well, I've heard that before, but I never knew that it came from Jimmy Dean.
I don't, that's, you find him online, you hope that's correct, right? I didn't know Jimmy Dean was a big sailor.
I've used some of my quotes and I've given them to the wrong authors.
That's right. That happens quite often. Yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we really need to keep in mind is what can we control and what can't we, and stop focusing on the things that we cannot control.
That's right. I mean, COVID came in, and those salespeople that are successful have found a way to continue to contact new people, find new opportunities, and continue to build their business. And so the Challenger Sale, I think, is the greatest book to be doing during this time because it was built off of an economic collapse.
Yeah.
So good. So adjust your sales to reach your destination.
So our show notes are going to be at the website getinthedoorpodcast.com. You can also check out past episodes. And if I could just put in a shameless plug, I've got a book available called Taking Off into the Wind. If you want to learn more about that, you
got to read the foreword, though.
That's the foreword, exactly.
That's
and
right.
The introduction,
and
both
the
of them, because it sets it up. It sets it up.
All right. Next week, we'll be doing Chapter 3 of the Challenger Sale, Exporting the Model to the Core. And our topic is, I'm doing the work, why don't I get the deal? And the conversation will be with our guest, Steve Keating. He's the author of the Lead Today blog. He's had a 40-year career as a sales leader. He's a very old friend of mine. We worked together 30 years ago, cutting our teeth at Dale Carnegie. You can learn more about him at stevekeating.me, stevekeating.me.
That's going to be a great episode, and I'm glad that I'm going to be there because that'll be a fabulous conversation, especially with somebody with as much experience as he has. It's like doubling ours or making more of ours.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, go out and get better one skill at a time.
Joyful selling.